Boom. There we go. Good evening, everyone. Say hello for posterity. That's your cue. Hello. We're gonna have to work on our lines a little bit more. Good. I'm turning off the microphones right now. I'm gonna mute everybody. But as always, if you have questions or you want to share something, there's a couple different ways that you can do it. I'm going to start getting everyone used to using the hand raise function. As our meetings and classes get bigger and bigger, it will, I think, be a lot more efficient if we start using that. So once again, down at the bottom where it says participants, there will be a little button next to your name that says raise hand. And so that will actually pop up on my screen to let me know that someone has done a hand raise, and then I'll be able to get to your question. One of the things that you may not know is that when I have a lot of people on the screen, it starts to flip over to a second screen. And if I'm not looking right at you, I can't see your question. I can't see you waving or talking. Sometimes people start talking, I'm like, where are you? I can't see you. So the hand raise function will help solve that. If you have a question during the evening, just go ahead and click on that. Sound groovy? Okay, excellent. So, yeah, Larry, you have to go up to the very top there and say, stop sharing. I think I can, oh, there we go. Thank you, sir. Oh, if I had a nickel for every time I did that. Tonight's webinar is about seated Tai Chi, seated Tai Chi Fit, seated flow. And in one sense, this is going to be pretty simple because the routine that we're learning and the movements that we're learning are the same movements we learn for the standing choreography. So the new basic standing choreography, the 6 combinations, we're going to use the same combos for the seated version. The transitions will also be almost the same, but I will be showing you some variations, some unique properties of the transitions that we adapt to the seated position. And that's one of the things that we want to go over tonight. But there are also some fundamental principles that I want to talk about when we get to the seated flow. And I think that's where I want to start. When we talk about flow itself, and we used to talk about this principle a lot more in the very beginning of our teacher training, and I don't know that we have emphasized it very much in the more recent years. But flow is a function of something we call synergy. In other words, flow is what you get when there is synergy. So underlying all of the flow principles and all of the characteristics of flow that we've talked about, the flow continuum, etc., there are these more foundational principles, which are the principles of synergy. And so when we are on the chair, I'm doing that because that's where the chair is over there. When we're on the chair, one of the things that we have an opportunity to do is to look more carefully at the synergy principles. And in fact, in one way, I think being on the chair and being an instructor looking at people on chairs, it's even easier to start seeing the synergy principles at work. And this will actually give you a new perspective on standing flow, so that when you're watching people in their standing classes, say, oh, you know, I have a deeper understanding of synergy and now I can see that, or not, when I'm watching my participants. Does that make sense? A little bit? Let me take you through a list of those synergy principles, and then maybe it'll make more sense. So there are 6 of them, 6 basic principles derived directly from traditional Tai Chi and Qigong principles. The first principle is something we might call slow down. Slow down. Although what this really means is be in the moment. It is a principle of be here now, of being in the moment. But being in the moment is kind of an experience that you're having rather than a thing that you're doing. So I can't really tell you, be in the moment. That just never works. Does anybody ever try to tell you that? You read it in a book and it says, Eckhart Tolle says, be here now, be in the moment. And you're like, fuck you. If I could be in the moment, I wouldn't need your book, right? So that doesn't help. But we can do something that is an action, and that is slow down. And slowing down is a bridge to that being in the moment. Does that make sense? So the first thing that we're looking at when we're looking at synergy principles is, are people kind of slowing down a little bit? Letting go of some of the frenetic pace of just breathing, although that's going to be another principle we talk about later. The second principle is what we would call relax. Relax. Now, once again, relax is, to be relaxed or to get into a relaxed state is an experience. It's a byproduct of being in a certain state. So when you're in flow, you get really relaxed. And to tell people to relax, the same thing as slow down or the same thing as be in the moment, that's not really helpful. Instead, we might talk about releasing or giving one permission, right? So in the beginning of every class, when I talk about I don't care what it looks like, or I don't care how you move, or I don't care if you do the same thing as I do, I'm giving people permission to do whatever they do, right? To let go of whatever they're holding on to. Right? The opposite of relax is holding on. Right? So, in fact, in Chinese, when in traditional Tai Chi, when we get to this principle, the favorite phrase of every traditional Tai Chi teacher is "fang song." "Fang song, fang song," which we often translate as relax, but that's a terrible translation. The phrase "fang song" literally means to let go and let loose. So we get loose and we stop holding on. Right? Part of how we get there is through your cueing. Right? So part of the cueing that you are going to be using in the modeling that you're doing and the constant reinforcement of I don't care allows people to let go and get loose, to free it up, if you will. So that's the second principle, is relax. The third principle is to be natural. Now, one of the ways that we look at this naturalness, natural movement, natural posture, is to say that it should be simple. Right? Simple is next to natural. If you look at somebody doing their movements and they seem to be all convoluted and trying to make a whole lot of extra motion in there, then one of the ways that we address that is to try to simplify. We've talked about this in a couple of the instructor hangouts where we addressed about a teaching strategy of sort of going backwards to a certain point in the breakdown of a combo until you can find the place where it's so simple that everybody's getting it. Like just sway back and forth. I'm not even doing anything with my hands or my head or anything. I'm just swaying back and forth. Everybody's with me. Great. Now we're on the same page. Now I can start adding in again, 1 foot, and then 1 foot, right? Until everybody's able to do the whole combination, but without the complication, right? Another aspect of this be natural is a principle, again, in traditional Tai Chi that we call Ziran, Z-I-R-A-N, Ziran, which has sort of multiple very, very close translations: to be natural, to follow nature, or to follow your nature. But I think probably the most closest translation to what it really means is to be authentic. To be authentic. So that's another part of the I don't care principle, because sometimes I watch people do movement and it's like, that looks nothing like what I'm doing. But I can see that for them it's an authentic motion. It's really coming out of them. It's not forced in any way. It just looks weird, but who cares? So to be authentic is that third principle, to be natural. Now, the fourth principle is a principle that we express as to sink down, to sink. And here again, we find several subtle meanings in this principle. In traditional Tai Chi, we're supposed to like lower the body to a certain level and then sort of maintain that level throughout the rest of your practice. We don't care about that, right? But it's interesting to watch people in class and how they bounce. People will start to, sort of go up and down in their postures, in their stances, without you cueing them. Like if you go up, of course you want them to go up. But what if you're going down, but they're going up and down, up and down? So they're not sinking down into the movements. They're literally not getting into it. Does that make sense? So in some way, they've sort of disconnected from you, disconnected from that flow, from that rhythmic entrainment. And what you want to do is not force them to be in a low posture, but to have them sink into a synergy with you that is so enjoyable. And here's the important part. If you guys are starting to make notes, circle this one. So enjoyable that they stick with it. Even if it's a new movement, even if it's a balance challenge, something like that, they stick with it because they are enjoying it so much, having such a good time, or they're in the moment. I was doing a little video lesson for our new learning platform, and I made the comment that when you're really in flow, when you're really in the moment, you're not really aware that you're having fun. It's like that's a non sequitur in that moment. It's just, I'm just there. And then afterwards you go, oh, that was so much fun, right? It's a memory of what that felt like. But in the moment, you don't need words for that. You just, right? So if you are creating that kind of space or that kind of context for them, then they'll stick with it longer. Sinking down is a metaphor for commitment. Sinking down is a metaphor for commitment. Commitment is only commitment when things get really challenging. Before things get really challenging, it's not commitment, it's just easy. So then what would have people be committed? Oh, other than, Carol. What motivates people into that commitment is the strongest thing that motivates people for that kind of commitment is love. but part of that whole love is just like I'm so fulfilled by this experience, right? You're cueing, you're leading the way that you bring your class together. You are creating that fulfillment for your participants. Does that make sense? And you're trying to lead them into that. The fifth principle is called balancing yin and yang. Balancing yin and yang. And here we can get a very sort of direct observation about another aspect of Ziran, to follow nature. When you deviate from how the Tao, how nature really works, then you have less and less flow. Remember, flow is a function of synergy. Synergy is involves not only you as an individual, but your relationship to everything else that's going on around you. Like if you're out of sync with the world that you're living in, even if it's, your Tai Chi room, if you're out of sync with nature, you won't be able to go very deeply into synergy. And if you don't go deeply into synergy, you won't get flow. Does that make sense? Right, so how does nature work? Nature works in a continuous cycle of yin and yang and yin and yang and yin and yang, where both yin and yang eventually find complete complementarity, complete harmony and balance with each other. So they say, all right, so if I'm leading a class, I don't want to lead them in a way that violates that, because then I'm like shoving them out of that synergy, of shoving them out of that cycle, and then you're not going to find flow. So as you do movements, you want to pay attention, and this comes, I think, a little bit in your choreography. So you've already planned movements that you know will balance both sides of the body, balance the breathing with the motion, that there are movements that gather as well as movements that expand, and that they're close to each other, so that you see this cycle, yin and yang and yin and yang and yin and yang. Okay. Finally, principle number 6, which we would call, oh, by the way, it's going to get noisy here in a second because it is 5:30, which means the gardeners are here. So, just because I'm having a class. So the 6th principle is the principle of timing and coordination. Timing and coordination. When you are doing your cueing, when you're leading your class and you're looking at your participants and you're saying, I don't see them in flow, one of the things to pay attention to is, have I cued the coordination of all of the parts? Right? Not just did I get all the parts to move, but did I get them in the right coordination? A lot of times when you watch me or in a class with me and I'm doing especially my multisensory cueing, and I'll do something crazy and I'll get lyrical, I'll tell a poem, I'll sing a song or something like that. What I'm really doing is I am speeding up or slowing down a certain part of the motion for you. Because to coordinate multiple limbs, some parts are going to have to move faster than others. It's not that all, the limbs and the torso and the head all move at the same time. They couldn't do that and achieve the posture, because some are heavier than others, some have farther to travel, right? So you've got to take a look at your coordination of the movements and then the timing of how they all progress through space. When you look at somebody who's really in flow, and you really, wow, that's just, it's so wonderful to look at. I can feel their energy. I can feel the rhythmic entrainment happening. Then try to evaluate it in terms of timing and coordination. What you'll see is, wow, they're like a ballet dancer. They're like fabulous. Everything is coordinated and landing perfectly at the same time. They're so coordinated. Right? So that, again, comes about by your cueing and by the way that you have choreographed the progression of movements. And this is going to be easier to see in the seated position. So the seated workout, the seated flow, is what we're recommending that you start with when you establish a new class, right? You don't have to make the whole class do seated flow for months and months and months, you know, if you want to do it just for a couple of weeks and then move on to standing. But this will introduce you, it'll introduce you to your participants, and it will introduce your participants to a flow state. Does that make sense? And it will be much easier to observe and assess. And then when they're standing, you'll get a whole lot more out of it. Okay, so those are the principles of synergy, and I wanted to set those out for us as we go into breaking down the combos. But let me pause for a second and see if there's any questions or requests for clarification or thoughts, and I can have some tea. By the way, I did mention that we were making a transition into a new learning platform for a new part A and Part B. There are quizzes on every module, so just in case you want to start asking questions. All right. Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't we go ahead and move into a space. Well, I'll tell you, before we do that, I do have some notes here. These are just sort of some random notes. I'll give them from the bench, as it were. So I'll go ahead and move into my new seated position over there. Boom. And we make this change on my other.
Permanently, is that a chaise lounge?
Not exactly. That is one of my woodworking projects. It's just a simple bench, but.
And you're going to try to sit on one of your woodworking projects for a while?
Oh, ye of little faith. Boy. All right. See, it holds me just fine. All right, so here are some more quick notes, just in a sort of a random order. When we are standing, we do embracing the moon a lot, because this area of the body, which some of my more advanced students remember as what I call the box or the egg, right? This space around here. This is sort of the space around which the arms in particular have to stay inside this perimeter, right? They don't want to go out too far. Now in Tai Chi Fit, we don't care, but we are sort of tricking our participants into getting used to this space. Now, when we sit, we kind of lose that a little bit, right? And my center of gravity has collapsed, because my body has collapsed. And so rather than this hold the ball space, even though I still have a torso here, it really is my lap now, which is the center. You see that? So up here was my center before, but as I collapse my body, the lap itself is my center. And so when we do our transitions, very often we will return to the lap. And so we're going to do a lot of movements where the hands come to the lap, and we get people sort of used to having their hands come to the top of the thighs and then trail off and do things like that. Again, when you get stuck with your transitions and you say, well, where should I be? Where do I need to go? You can say, oh, well, I've got to get my hands back to my lap. And that'll be something convenient. All right, I got to get out of a certain screen here. There we go. All right, good. Second thing. The seated flow routine, once you're good at leading this, and maybe don't get all excited yet, because I want to be actually managing when we do this. But it doesn't necessarily have to be completely seated. You can use this routine to transition from sitting to standing. And in fact, the whole routine at some point in time can choreograph stand to sit and sit to stand, right? And this is an excellent way if you've got people in your class, some of your veterans that you'll be having in your classes, some of your seniors or people in rehab who, this weekend I'll be in Asheville working with Matt Jeffs, who's a physical therapist, and this is exactly the kind of exercises that his physical therapy patients are needing. So we can progress from sit to stand and from stand to sit, right? In that similar vein, to that, the seated flow can be a progression in sort of two directions. You can use it, as a strengthener, and so you can progress people from sitting into eventually standing and doing the whole routine standing. But by the same token, if you've got somebody who's undergoing a declining health condition, getting more frail, then they can progress from standing to sitting without losing the ability to move, without having to give up their Tai Chi. Does that make sense? Yes. Hold on one second. My gardeners are the loudest here. Hold on. Say that again.
I said I don't think you could see my hand from where you were sitting.
No, I couldn't. Go ahead.
All right. You mentioned returning the hands to the lap.
Yes.
Okay. Now, are you saying that you do that after each movement, or are you doing that just as a pause? I'm wondering about the breaking of the flow.
So you'll use these in the same way that you do sinking the qi. When you do sinking the qi, the hands come in and drift down past the torso, past the abdomen, the dantian, and down by your sides. So how do we do a similar kind of movement without breaking the flow, since our lap is in the way now, right? So instead of trying to avoid the knees and the lap, we're going to actually utilize them as a place to go to deliberately. So the hands now will turn, in sinking the qi, they'll turn palm down and float down and caress the lap, if you will. I'm going to show you guys here when I move back to the bench. But that will be, what we do with the lap there. Does that make sense? Does that help? Okay, great. And yeah, where I am on the bench, I can't see your hands go up. So for tonight, I'm going to ask you guys to go ahead and unmute yourself and let me know that you have a question. But one of the things that will happen when we get all the new equipment for the Veterans Program is I'm going to get a bigger screen so that I can see you from all the way over here. Some of you, because I read minds, have already thought of this, but the seated flow is an excellent format for iron fusion, particularly balls. Again, don't get all excited. Let us, sort of tell you that, especially for people who are using this for the Veterans Program, let us give you the heads up that, hey, you can start adding the balls into an iron fusion kind of format. And by the way, just to be clear, the reason for the sort of micromanagement of what format you're using for the Veterans Program is because we are being monitored by our bosses, and we have to let them know what everybody's doing at a particular period of time. So we want to keep everybody on the same page, because if they audit and we haven't audited first, we're in trouble. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, so I think that's all the notes that I have. Any questions before we get going? All right, I'll take that as a no. So when you are about to do the seated class, I would do the same kind of thing that I always do and say, welcome to this Taiji Fit Flow experience. I'm so glad you're here. Here's the good news. You don't have to learn nothing. You don't have to get anything, any particular degree of perfection. In fact, if I go this way and you go this way, I don't care. I don't care. I'm just glad you're here with me. We're going to have some fun with this. We're going to use our toes. We're going to use our fingers. We're going to use our knees, maybe even the top of the head. Who knows? We'll see. But I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I am going to scoot forward on my chair until just the edge of my tuchus is on the bench there. This is what I taught Kaz last week, that this is called redlining. Because if you sit on the edge of your chair long enough, you'll get a red line right there. So I come up in red line. My feet are about shoulder width apart. And my hands are right on my lap, feet flat. But once again, that's just what I'm doing. Y'all can do whatever you feel like. But I'm going to let my hands slide off the sides of my lap and gently float out to the outside. And then they float back down again, like the wings of a bird. Bird in a chair. Is anybody old enough to remember Western Airlines? Where they had the big bird flying on the outside of the plane. Western Airlines, the only way to fly. All right, let your Western airline wings expand and then round out, come into the center, and the hands turn palm down and float down to your lap again. And then slide off the side of your lap and float out to the outside, round like a big hug, and float down. This is a move we call sinking the chi. Floating in and down. And this time just let them come to rest right there on your lap. Beautiful. Now slide those hands forward until they fall off the edge of your knees and rise up in front of you. They pull in a little bit and back down to your lap again. Slide forward. Breathe in and rise up. Breathe out and come down in a big circle. Right? This is what we call opening the door. So we're just getting started. Down to your lap, slide forward, rise up. And as they rise up in front of your chest, let them round out like they're making a big hug. Inhale and open, and then this hand scoops underneath, almost just skimming on top of your thighs there. And this hand on top makes a big round ball. Inhale and open. Exhale, and once again, this hand scoops under, making a big round ball. We call this embracing the moon. Inhale. As we embrace the moon, as we hold that ball, Let's come up on both toes. Right? And then open and let the feet go flat. Changing, alternating, capture the moon. The heels come up and then back down again. One more time. Heels come up. Feet relax. Last one. Embracing the moon. And then the fingertips drift back together. Hands flatten and float all the way down. And then slide off the edge of your knees and sink the chi. And then let them come to rest right on your lap. All right, let's pause for a second. So this should be very recognizable. This is combo number 1 from the standing routine. This is the sinking the chi combo. You see it's almost the same, but there are some subtle differences in the way that we use the legs and lap here. Any questions about this or observations? And once again, you're going to have to yell it out because I can't see your hands.
Did you want to go? Was that Judy?
Go ahead.
Okay, so I noticed that when the hands go into sinking the chi, you mentioned knees. I find it more natural to let it slide off more like mid-thigh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's just your own kind of standing meditation with.
Yes, yes. So turn sideways here, and probably somebody should remind me not to wear black. So if I was really being precise, this would be my knee, and that's not what I'm sliding off of. So not quite mid-thigh, but right about there. That's what they're sliding. I'm trying to give people a general sense of this whole lap area, right? Does that make sense? So that's what I'm talking about. And you may feel, you can absolutely come up with your own cueing for this to get them into that posture. That doesn't have to be exactly what I'm saying.
Okay, thank you.
You betcha. Cool, what else?
Question?
Yes.
Okay, so the rising on the toes in the standing forms, that's going to be the equivalent of, rising and then we'll like to sink with like the breath. So we're using the toes in lieu of rising and falling.
That is correct. Really great observation. So now that the questions come up, let me talk about this for a moment. If synergy is essentially using as much of the body as possible with every movement, what do we do when we're in a seated position and we don't have a need? For example, for one thing, we're not rising and falling. We're not doing vertical transitions here, right? I'm just sitting. So what do I do with my legs? Do I just do nothing with my legs? Well, in fact, we can get them activated by doing this toe raise. And we'll see as we go forward some other examples of when I can do toe raises, when I can do heel raises to involve the legs. Because even though I'm just kind of moving the foot, I'm getting muscle contraction further up the whole leg. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks for asking the question. That was a great observation, and I was waiting to bring that up.
But once again, you have to observe your audience because you may have people who cannot move the lower part of their body at all.
This is true. And we're not demanding a whole lot of motion. So in the case, and this is actually another good question. We're going to be covering this in the Part B training, so in the rest of the Part B training, when we talk about modifications, and I put that in quotations there because the method, the Tai Chi Fit method, is never to modify. Right? A modification is an announcement that you are doing something different because the original can't be done. And so we never want to get people into that kind of thought at all. So if you're observing and you say, oh, Jesus, there's half my people can't get up on their toes, don't stop. Don't say anything. Just keep going. Just stop doing it as if that was your plan all along. Right? So that's our method. We just don't say anything about it. We'll change our cueing because, as Judy points out, you've got to be observing. You've got to always be asking this question, how is it affecting flow? And if flow's not happening because you've started to do a movement that people can't really do, then just go right into something else. Cool.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Let's go ahead and yell it out. All right, awesome. So we've just done sinking the chi. Okay. Now I'm just going to start to go like this. I'm just swaying back and forth, just sort of like from cheek to cheek, dancing cheek to cheek. That's all I'm doing here. And as I get over to one side, I'm going to pick up one foot and just tap the heel down. And notice that I'm really leaning, which in one sense is not really a Tai Chi thing, But in this case, this leaning over here is a physical action called lateral flexion. And it is an activation of more of the muscles of the body, right? So in this case, this is a good thing. Once again, I'm trying to use more of my body, even though I'm in a sitting position, which is because the more of your body that you're using, the more synergy that you're getting, the more synergy that you're getting, the more flow that you'll result from that. Does that make sense? Right? And so I'm swaying over here, one heel, swaying over here, one heel. Swaying over here, one heel and one hand above the foot. Swaying over the other side, one heel, one hand above the foot. One hand above the foot, and then I take the other hand right above that knee right there. Back to my lap they go, one hand above the foot, one hand above the knee. Back to my lap they go, and then they both sort of slide and circle around, boom. And slide and circle around, boom. And if you wanna, if you feel good, you can even lean into it and circle around. And breathe into it. Big inhale and exhale. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, and we call this playing the peepaw. Now let's take this hand and drop it down to our lap and let it slide across the lap and circle around to catch that moon again. Now we'll take this hand away, and this hand, toss the moon out across the room. Swaying back, capture that moon right in the palm of your hand again, toss it away again. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in. Beautiful. Let's take that top hand back in again. Now as I toss the moon away, I let one hand come right down to my lap. Slide off and capture the moon again. Breathe in to gather. Breathe out to toss away. And then play the peepaw. Big circle, small circle. Breathe in, breathe out. Take this hand and let it drop to your lap and slide off all the way around to capture the moon again. And take that top hand, toss it behind yourself so you can just get that moon drifting out like a giant soap bubble. And then adding this top hand back in again. When one hand goes out, the other one right down to your thigh. Breathe in. Ah, big sigh. Watch the soap bubble all the way around, and then play the peepaw. Once, twice, 3 times. Oh, sorry. Back to the center we come with a big hug. Inhale, open, fingertips coming drift back together. Hands flatten down to your lap again. And then slide off to sink the chi one more time. And on the last time, let them come right back down, comfortably resting on your lap. All right, so that's combo number 2. Now you can stay right here with this amount of progression in combo number 2, but this would be like in our standing without the stepping out into a lunge position. Does that make sense? So how do you get a lunge position in a seated position? So the way that we do that, if you wanted to continue and do another round of these, right? So here I am, I'm going to circle around, bring this foot in, step out just a little bit farther, and landing on the heel, foot flat. Toe up, foot flat. Toe up, foot flat. Bringing my foot back in, play the peepaw once, twice, 3 times. Circling around and bring this toe in, and then a little bit longer step right on the heel, foot flat. Foot up, foot flat. Breathe in, breathe out, and bring it back in, sinking the chi, or play the peepaw first. Once, twice, and then back to the center, big hug, inhale and open, and you would go back to your whole sinking the chi transition. And that is combo number 2. Questions? Does that make sense?
Yeah, can you just go over going into the lunge position super quickly one more time?
Yes. So this is not we're not trying to get them into a super long position here. Sometimes that can be constrained by the kind of chair that they're in, or if they're not very flexible. So it's really just, you know, a little bit more of a reach. That's it. And then the substitution, if you will, for the full lunge position is to go from heel, which is toe up, to toes down. Toes up, toes down. And so toes down mimics the lunge itself. Toes up is, I haven't lunged entirely. I'm sitting back from that lunge, right? This is actually easier than leaving the foot flat and just kind of trying to go back and forth here. This is a bit awkward. This is a little bit easier. If you've got a group of people who are really active, they're just not standers, you can actually do this. Here's my lunge. Here I'm going to step back in, step out, lunge. Step in, step out, lunge. I wouldn't start there, but you might end up there.
Ask about the wheelchair people. Would you still have them put their heel down, then their toe down? I'm sorry, their toe down, then their heel down, and then flat?
That's a really interesting question. Before you even get them into a class, before you even have them do any stuff at all, I would do a test to assess what their mobility is like in that wheelchair. And so one of the things that I do for people is like, I would just have them sit in the chair and say, let me just see you wiggle your toes. Right? And say, oh, okay, so there's no wiggling going on there. So then I wouldn't even try to get them to do anything with their feet. But if they can wiggle their toes, it's like, okay, great. Can you lift your toes up and just, you know, do a little dancing, you know, in your chair? Great. How about on the toes? I would do this assessment before I did anything else, because the wheelchair people are really, you know, I don't want to use the word special. That's just, it just sounds condescending. But a different population, and you don't know how you're going to cue them unless you do that assessment first.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I've had students of mine who have been stroke victims, right? They've had a stroke. And a lot of times what they say is not the reality. They'll tell you things because they've heard it from their doctor, or because they've just sort of embraced some kind of thought. Like, you know, I can't walk like I used to, or I don't have any feeling on one side of my body, or, you know, I can't really do physical movements. But in reality, they can. It may look a little spastic. But the fact that they have any movement at all means that they have some activation of the nervous system and the muscular system. And so everything else is simply a matter of degree. Does that make sense? If you get nothing, that's a whole different story. Okay, great. Any other questions? Yeah, Judy.
Yeah, about that assessment. Now, would you do that as a group? Would you do it singly? If you had like four to eight people in the group, would you have them all do this little test thing, or just one at a time, or what?
If you have an opportunity to do it individually. See, I don't know that there's a real hard and fast answer for that. If you meet a student who comes in and they're already terribly self-conscious because of being in a wheelchair, then, you know, I'm going to make it worse by calling attention to them, right? On the other hand, there's times when, you know, everybody's in the room, they're all in wheelchairs, they're all like, yeah, whatever, you know, and you can make it a fun thing. You can make it a fun time for everybody. You put your right foot in, you put your right foot out, you put your right in, shake it all about. You do the hokey pokey, you can do the hokey pokey, you can do the, you can't do the hokey pokey, and we'll turn yourself around, right? And that's how I would do it. But then I'm crazy.
Well, that's for sure, but
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Inside of that sort of craziness that I'm making fun of myself there is there's a method to the madness, and it's really all about trying to get out of the self-consciousness. So if I'm crazy, if I make a silly situation, I want to do it in such a way that people are not thinking about, you know, I'm on display, or I'm on spotlight, or I'm going to do it wrong, or it's going to be a problem. I want to do it in a way that's like, that dude's just whack, but I'm okay. Does that make sense?
I have a question.
Yes.
So I'm wondering, in our standing flow classes, we kind of let people determine for themselves, like when we do the kicks or something like that, what they're going to do. So I'm just wondering why we wouldn't just use an assessment during the class to see that. Like if you say we're going to tap this heel out, and like only one person taps their heel, then maybe after
Right.
that one thing, you know, you would change it to something else, or
Yeah.
anyway, just wondering that.
No, exactly, and that's exactly what I meant with the earlier question. Like if you're looking at that, and you know, see, here's the thing. So Yvonne's right on the money when she talks about doing an assessment. But for me, every single movement I do in the class is an assessment, from beginning to end. I'm assessing everything, right? So the moment that you notice something and say, "Oh, it's not working," then just change it, but don't say anything about it. Just change it. And Yvonne's right. It's like, okay, I'm the only one with my heel out. We're going to do something else. We're just going to go, eh, or we're just going to visualize my foot's out, or something, something different. Cool. All right. I want to move us right along because of the time. We're never going to get through all of these combinations. So I'm going to just sort of move this a little bit faster, but I want to show you some of the unique variations of these movements from the seated position. All right, so we've just finished our second combo. My hands are back on my lap again. I'm going to slide them forward until they fall off my knees, then rise up and round out. Inhale and open, and then as they float back together, they flip over. Now this hand's going to fall and just skim past my thigh out to the side, float in, and then push right to the center while this hand falls, just skims past my thigh, reaching out there. And no, you're not imagining it. I am sort of leaning into that side. Breathe in and push and lean out. Lovely. Stay with me. We're going to take that away, and then this hand's going to go with it, and my foot's going to step in. Okay? Beautiful. Now, this hand is going to, or I'm sorry, wait for it. This toe is going to lift up and down. Lift up and down. Lift up and down. Beautiful. This hand's going to push down along with the toe and down. And the toe. Or I guess you could say the heel comes up. I don't know how you want to say it. This hand waves on in. All with that toe still working. And then both hands and that little tiny toe there. All right, now on the next one, I'm going to step out to the side here. I'm going to take this and step out to the side. Both hands work, and then my foot goes flat and push. All right, let's just rewind from there. Coming back in, foot goes flat and push. Come back in, foot goes flat and push. Beautiful. And then bringing this foot in, this hand floats across the room, up and over the top like a rainbow, and step in. The toe comes up and flat. The heel comes up, sorry. The toe goes down and flat. This hand pushes down with the toe. I know what you're thinking. Yes, you don't have to do the toe if nobody's towable. That's a new word, towable. Here we go, and both hands together, and down, and down. You can be really fancy and do both toes if you wanted to. Ooh. On the next one, we're going to take that little wider step, and then the foot goes flat and push. Now stay with me. This hand drops, skims over the top of my thigh. The other one goes up and over the top, and the toe comes up. Is that a lot? Let's try that again. Push, circle, the toe comes up and push. Yes, definitely don't want to be chewing gum right now. You will break something. One more time, circling around and push. Bring this foot back on in, across the room and over the top, and step on in. And let's just pretend we've done all that. On the very end, we would go like this. We would say, stepping that foot back in, right to the middle here with a big hug. Inhale and open. The fingertips come floating back together. Flatten and down and slide off my thighs to sink the chi. 2, one more time. And then letting my hands come to rest on my lap. All right, so that was our third combo. Make sense? Cool. You're starting to get the sense of how we use the whole body in some of these positions?
PDR?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi. So you're sitting on a long bench, and when you lean out and stretch the leg, you're not going over the corner of the chair because you have a long bench.
I've done this on, I just didn't have a chair with me tonight. Think of the corner of the chair seat as the place where you would step out to.
So yeah, that was my question because I think I've seen Judy do that. Right, Judy, am I right? So that's my question, I guess. If your people are sitting on a chair with a corner, are you spreading the hips so that the leg goes over the corner?
So this is a really good question, and it actually brings up something that you will see develop over time in your class, and that is the flexibility of the hips here. We might assume, just as a baseline, that the kinds of people that we typically get in our class, which are older adults, sometimes in senior populations, when we start working with the veterans, that population, who will be tight in the hips. And so whether they have a chair obstruction or not, going, really sideways here might be difficult. But once you've got them moving here, then they start to get more flexible in these corners. And when that starts to happen, you might want to work with repositioning the body to take advantage of more than one direction of space. This is an additional synergy principle. So when we think about synergy, we say it's bringing all the parts of the body together. So I want my legs to be operating and not just sitting idle while my hands are doing all the work. But it's also my body in relationship to the space around me. So as much as possible, I want to start using different corners, different angles. We also talk about 3 planes of movement. Plane here, right? Planes here. And 3 levels. Up over the top, down in the middle. We're going to get into snake creeps down. So 3 planes, 3 levels. Does that make sense? I know that was a really long answer. But what I'm suggesting is, if you have an obstruction, then work around the obstruction. Just use that corner. If you don't have an obstruction, or if you have people who are getting to be more flexible in the hips, start using more of the space around you. Yeah, I see another hand go up there, but I can't see who it is, so go ahead.
Oh, it are me.
Okay.
Okay, 2 questions.
Yes.
I noticed you are not turning at the waist almost at all. Now, is that something that is not supposed to be done, or is that because you're just not doing it?
I'm just not doing it. But also, like the flexibility of the hips here, when you're in a seated position, you do have a bit of a constraint unless you can really get into the hip joint. Like if your hips aren't very flexible, then you're turning from the spine, kind of from the diaphragm upward, right? And so that's a bit of an awkward position. But if I can combine that with change in my hip position, then I can get much more rotation in there. In the beginning, you're not going to see that. So let's start with very sort of what I've been doing. What I've been doing is utilizing the lateral motion here more so than anything else.
Yeah. Second question.
Yeah.
You're in a wheelchair, which generally has arms. How do you cope with the arms on the wheelchair? Or if it's a wheelchair that just has the wheels, they're there. Or if you have someone that has to sit in a chair with arms for balance.
So in these cases, it's part of the earlier assessment that we were talking about there, that there's always a workaround for everything. Because we don't have any demands that anybody has to do a movement in a certain way, we're always doing the best we can, meeting people where they're at right now. Right? There's no right or wrong way for them to do it. There is only my ability to try to lead them into an experience. In the beginning, so people wind up in a wheelchair after a series of events in their life, right? And so, what put them in the wheelchair in the first place has limited the amount of flow that they can experience for, however long they've been like that. And so even a little bit of flow that you could lead them into might be life-altering. It's huge for them. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can fix that.
Okay.
There we go. So does that make sense?
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah. Does anybody want to need a follow-up on that? All right, let's go on. Next combination. Combo number 4. So combo number 4 is cloud hands. So I've just finished sinking the chi. My hands have come to rest on my lap. Now they're going to slide forward off of my knees, floating up, round out with a big hug. Inhale and open. And this hand falls and scoops across, just skimming over the top of my knees. When it gets to the corner, they change places, one hand up, one hand down, and then both of them. And see, Judy, here is my rotation. I was waiting for this combo to bring rotation in. Breathe in to change, breathe out, and we call this the cloud hands. Right? All the way across. When I get to this corner, this hand was turn over, make a hook, all fingertips and thumb together, and then the bottom hand rises up, opens out, open, open, open at the very end. And then release that hook and let them skim across my knees, change shape, drifting like clouds from side to side. Breathe in, breathe out to turn. Breathe in, breathe out. And when I get to this corner, this hand will make a hook, and this hand will open out, and we call this the whip. And scoop under, open, 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 whip. Breathe in, breathe out. Release that hook. Come on down and through. So we'll imagine we've done a number of these. Single whip with repetitions, and then reverse direction, up and over the top, down and right across my thighs and through. Over the top, down right across my thighs and through. The snake creeps down. Releasing that hook, come all the way through, and 2 times with the cloud. Hook right there, open, 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 and then reverse direction, and through. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out, through. And then release that hook and come on over here and make a big hug. Bring it right back to center and sink the chi. Back in and down. All right, now there again is the version without any footwork, and so you might elect to simply take it this far. But if you want to add the lunge, you would do it like this. And by the way, this is the same choreography that we do standing. We would come to a sink the chi and reset, and then start over with the using footwork, right? So my hands have come back to my lap, slide forward, float up, round out, big hug. Inhale and open. This hand scoops down, 2 clouds. Then step in as you hook. Step out, and then as I single whip, my foot goes flat. Breathing in, breathing out. Breathing in, breathing out. Release that hook, come down, step it back in. Step in and hook, step out, single whip. And then, you ready for this? Reverse direction, up and over the top, down and through. One more time. And release that hook. Come on over here, make a big hug. Bring it back to center. Inhale and open. Sinking the chi. All right. By the way, how many repetitions do we do? The same number as our standing routine. Threes and fours, and twos. Twos, threes, and fours, depending on which movement it is. But it would be the same, the same count, if you will. Now, some of you have been in my sessions when I talked about this, but if you haven't been in a session where we've talked about this, what I have amended to that is that if you are assessing your class and you're going, 3's not enough, I need to do a couple more repetitions, then do the additional repetitions. If you need to do 6 repetitions instead of 3 because people aren't catching the flow, then do that. Right? Just remember that that will change the overall time expended in the class. Yes.
I couldn't quite see the first time you did the snake creeps down. Were you actually touching your thighs as you went across, or just brushing just above, or were you touching?
You could do either. I like to actually come in physical contact. It increases the sensuality. I mean, there's not a whole lot of other movements. I mean, we have some. For example, like in the Qigong movements, when we do tiger and the bear and all that kind of stuff, we have some tactile sensations. So to add an opportunity for tactile sensation is something I really like. And so I'm taking advantage of that opportunity, but you don't have to. And one reason why you might not do it is skin sensitivity. If you notice, and here again, you want to watch body language and facial expressions. If you've got people who their hands are brushing across their pant leg or whatever, and it seems to be irritating them, then I would cue them out of it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, that's one of those things that's often overlooked. People, it's like, well, it doesn't bother me. But if you've got somebody who has thinner skin or who has had a stroke or has neuropathy, there's a lot of times that this is really bothersome.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Cool. What else? Other questions? All righty then, on to combo number 5. So I've just finished sinking the chi. My hands have come to rest on the top of my lap. Sliding my hands forward till they fall off the knees, they rise up and round out. Inhale and open, then scoop this hand under to catch the big round moon and step in. Now, stepping out, I'm going to let this arm open up to push the door open, right? Circling back around, the back of this arm pushes the door open, and this hand just comes to rest on my lap. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe breathe out. Good. Now stay with me as this hand comes forward and then circles up and around. I step in, catching the moon, and bring the other foot in. Oh, look at that, both feet moving. Step on out, and back of the hand opens up the door. Breathing in, breathing out. The expansion, the ward off, the open the curtain movement. One more time. And then this hand comes forward, crosses under, lifts up and circles around. Step in, and stepping out, expand. 2. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, just once. And then this hand comes forward, and both hands slide down. And we're just going to loop that around again. Slide down. Breathing in, breathing out. Bless you. Breathing in, breathing out, and stay with me. Come forward and slide this hand under the circle around the double spiral. Step in one time. Use the back of the arm to open up the curtain. Reaching forward, both hands slide down. Loop around. One more time. And then coming forward, cross that hand underneath, circle around, stepping in, catch the moon one time, opening up the curtain. Reaching forward and one time sliding down, and then toss it away into the corner. Fold it on up and squeeze it into the box. Let's just do that again. They slide down, they toss away, fold on up and squeeze into the box. Beautiful. And stay with me as I slide this hand under, circle around, catching the moon, stepping out one time, open the door. One time, sliding down. Now toss away, fold it up, squeeze. Lovely. Sliding underneath, circle around. One time, expand. Reaching forward one time, withdraw. Toss away, and one time, squish it into the box. And then both hands slide apart. Breathe in, breathe out. Pull and push. Pull and push. Now stay with me as we do something a little bit different. I'm going to get both hands into my chest and open and step in. One time, expand. One time, slide down. One time, squish. And breathe in, breathe out. One more time. And then pull both hands in and open, open, open. Step in with a big hug. Inhale and sink the chi. Three times. Last time, letting my hands come to rest on my lap. Beautiful. So that seemed like you guys got that a lot easier than last time, the previous movement. You starting to get a hang of it here?
Yep.
Yep. All right. Just in the interest of time, let me ask you to save questions that you might have, and let's do the last combo. It's going to be the easiest one, and then I'm going to come back to the desk and we can answer any questions. All right, last combo is the heart opening combination. Hands begin right here on your lap. Then they will slide forward, falling off your knees, rising up. Inhale and open, and then up, over the top, and down, down, down. the toes come up, sliding off. Oops, I'm sorry. Toes come up, they're right here. And then back down on your feet as they come back to the heart, and out around underneath the toes come up. No, the heels come up. My bad. Back up to the heart. And did you guys know what I was talking about? Nobody said anything. Inhale over the top. Ah, the heels come up, the toes are down. Back up to the heart, and here we go, diamond shape with the fingers, and press out. Breathing out, extending out, leaning into it, leaning more, and down. Back to my thighs again. Sliding off, and over the top. The heels come up. The heels go down as my hands come back to my heart and circle out, down, underneath, and the heels come up again. Back up to the heart. Down and up and over the top. And back up to the heart, diamond shape with your fingers, and reach out, extending out. Oh, that feels so nice. Reaching, and relaxing. And one last time, sinking the chi. And rest. All right. Very nice. Come on back in or slide back into your chair. I'm going to come back up to the desk and we'll chat. All right. That started to get pretty nice there. Okay, I see a couple of questions. Yvonne, do you have a question?
Yes, on the last, when we were doing the heart opening, I didn't quite get, I understood what you meant about lifting your heels, but I didn't quite get the coordination of that. So is it, as you gather in, your heels drop, as you lift, they come up? Is that kind of the...
So the substitution is for the sinking down and standing up. So because I'm not using my legs, where I would be sitting, I'm going to lift up my heels.
Okay.
And where I would be standing back up, I'm going to let my feet go flat.
Thank you.
You betcha. Yeah, this is one of those left-right things. Let's see. Kelly, yes.
How long would you think a class like this for people in chairs should be?
So it's appropriate to do a 30-minute seated class unless you have assessed that they're not quite ready for that. So on the basis of the number of repetitions that we have, when we did the standing class, it worked out to be about 30, 35 minutes, right? So all 6 combos with 2, 3s, and 4s, repetitions, that's a 30-minute class. If you need a shorter class, what you can do is simply remove one of the combos. Like if you've got a seated class because they're frail in some way, and you say, a 30-minute class is just a lot, then I would take out one of the combos. Maybe the brush, knee, and push combo is a good one because it's more complex than the other combinations. So that is one that is an easy sort of take out and put back in later.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Cool. Judy, yes.
I was just kind of wondering, if you were working with a group that hasn't done much moving into, you're walking in, let's say, maybe the second class you've met with them, do you do any warm-up with them, any stretching, anything like that?
The movements themselves are what you would do for warm-ups or stretching, right? So if you one of the purposes of the plus ones in our format is to address, parts of the body that seem to be tight or disconnected or unprepared for the combinations, which is the purpose of doing a warm-up, right? The purpose of doing a warm-up or a stretch is to prepare the body for the exercises that you're doing. Well, Tai Chi was originally designed so that you didn't have to do that. They were themselves an appropriate warm-up. It was just a matter of degree, right? It's like, now that I told Kelly to take out brush knee, I would say, for me, brush knee is like a wonderful, very comprehensive kind of movement. Like I can get my whole body involved with brush knee, and so it is my warm-up. But what I might do is I might do it more gently the first couple of times through, and then do it a little bit more elongated as I can see myself, moving more freely. Does that make sense? Yeah. But in the Tai Chi Fit method, we don't have a warm-up that is different from the movements of the choreography itself. That's just not part of our style. Use the movements in the choreography to be your progression from a warm-up to, they're already choreographed to movements which are less demanding, to movements which are more demanding, movements that are simpler in complexity to movements which are more complex. They're already choreographed in that way. So use those movements, in the way they were designed. Cool. What else? Other questions?
Yes, David?
Yes.
My class has already asked me to do a seated Tai Chi, but I told them I had to wait till next week.
All right. Excellent. I'm not sure I'm going to use all the stuff that we recorded tonight, but I'll probably start with a bit of this video because we're recording it right now. But there will also be a full-on seated flow video on the new Part B learning platform. I've been hard at work at it. I was talking to Judy about it yesterday. I showed it to her, and the launch date for this is next week, is May 1st. So on May 1st, we'll have both A and B. So you'll be able to go back to Part A and review all kinds of stuff there, and also use Part B to view a video like this, to review the combos, et cetera, et cetera.
Good.
Yeah. That's if you've signed up for Part B.
Will that be on the same through Tai Chi Fit Net?
No. We are, so two things about that. As soon as we are given the green light by our people, which will probably be next week, we're going to have a new company come in and redesign the whole website. So what the website looks like right now is on its last few days, and it's temporary. You will get a new link that will link you directly to the new learning platform. And some of you may know it. Any school teachers in our group here tonight, working for public school systems? This is a platform called Canvas. My kids use it in school. My teenager uses it for her high school classes, and I know that a lot of colleges use it as well. So you'll get a link that'll take you right there. And so everybody will get the link to Part A, and if you've signed up for Part B, then we'll send that to you as soon as it launches. And then new people, as they sign up for Part B, will get it automatically in their confirmation. Cool.
Since you recorded tonight, do we all get a copy of that one?
Yes. Yes, you will. You get your own copy. We'll send you a link to the recorded version, but then this will also go on the learning platform.
Thank you.
You bet. KK.
Yes, going back to the Tai Chi Fit,
Right.
Okay. Not having dealt with it, I can only imagine there's a computer all sorts of levels because they do. So, do you take it down for the people that need lesser and let the people that are more able have to come back down to get back in pro?
So there's a little bit of yes and a little bit of no in my answer here. So a little bit of yes is that when I'm doing an assessment of my group, and in particular in the first 5 or 10 minutes of the class, I am looking for my lowest common denominator. And then I'll sort of set the pace based on that. But I'm going to also allow it to ramp up because I trust rhythmic entrainment, right? Rhythmic entrainment is, and so all you have to focus on, you know, once you've made that initial determination, say, okay, there's my lowest common denominator, let me work with that person, you know, like as if I'm teaching that person, then forget about it. Forget about that and just focus on getting them into flow. Right? You don't have to make any modifications or worry about it. As rhythmic entrainment takes over, you will see miraculous things happen. The lame can walk again.
The lower rises.
Yes. It's exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, you bet. T, yes.
Yes, the video that you just mentioned for part 2 or the training that will be online, so will that part 2 have sensory cues and suggested music for this seated Tai Chi you just showed us? So I'm wondering about the sensory cues for the seated version.
That's a really good question. I don't have that in there at the moment. I'm asking people for feedback on this, so I love that recommendation. I am already in the process of writing a starter kit of multisensory cueing, if you will, right? You know, I want to make it clear that I'll be making it clear on the learning platform that this is not a script for you to use. These are things that I use a lot, you know, catching the soap bubble of the moon and that kind of. But we've had a lot of people ask for that kind of thing, so I will be doing that. And I would guess, I mean, my thought has always been that you'll use almost the same kind of cueing for the seated version. But there are, I think, it is a very logical assumption that there will be some differences, and so there'll be some new opportunities for new cueing with the seated. We'll put that in there. And music, yeah, we'll talk about music as well. We've already had some new thoughts about, in particular, as we start working with our veterans, music choices that don't trigger nervous systems. Like I don't care about preferences. Like, you know, it's like that hippie music. Oh my God! Like that's not what I'm worried about. But there is music that activates the nervous system sometimes, and so we want to avoid that kind of thing. Yvonne, yes.
On the seated flow, for everybody is don't be afraid to try this in your classes that you've already done standing. You'll be surprised at what a positive response you can get because people are then not worried about, well, since I work with a lot of seniors, you can get a lot better movement sometimes when they break it up, and they also, you see it a little differently, you feel it a little differently, so, you know, maybe try it.
Yeah, absolutely. So now that you've had one training in this, there's a lot more to come back and until you'll feel really comfortable with this choreography and using the seated version. But now don't be afraid to try it. You know, you can break up your standing classes into let's do some seated and then stand back up again. Or hey, I got a special treat today. It's all seated. It's all in a chair. Take a nap. You know, you can the way that you're going to get better at teaching seated flow is to teach more seated flow. All right. Any last questions? Yeah, Joseph.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. I actually, when I did the grasping sparrow's tail, I'll actually tongue, like legit tongue. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's fine.
I was trying it out when I was seeding. I was like, oh yeah, I like that.
Yeah, if you like it, that's nice. Within our system, within the Tai Chi Fit method, there is room for personal expression and variation. I'm teaching you a standard way of doing this in the hopes that everybody will be able to have a beginning that they can all do, and we all know what the result will be. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If you want to do something like, this is a very small variation in my book, right, here to here. If you want to do that, make sure that you can cue it without losing flow. Does that make sense? That's sort of the standard for everybody. If you have a variation, I tried this. Sometimes shit like that happens to me all the time. It's an accident, and then all of a sudden I'm like, ooh, I like that, and want to do it. If you can't cue it, don't do it. That's the rule. Sweet. All right. On that note, I think we'll bring it to a close. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight and going through this training. You are all 12 kinds of awesome. I really appreciate you. And as soon as we can get this uploaded, I'll send you all the link to tonight's recording. Please send me any questions and feedback you have on the seated flow. Remember, this is a rollout of a new choreography that is going to become one of our basics, one of our standards. So we'll have, the standing basic and the seated basic, and that's what we'll be using for our new project. So any kind of feedback that you want to give on this is greatly appreciated. Set your calendars for May 9th. If you haven't already done so, go and RSVP to just one, Yvonne. One of the sessions, and I won't be here Monday for Monday Morning Flow because I'll be in North Carolina still. So I'll see you the following Monday. All right. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you.